Hello watch enthusiasts. In terms of aviation watches, the first brand that one thinks of is Breitling. Now, they've been around for a very long time and have produced some really quite incredible watches in both the aviation and general sports watch world. Now, Breitling, and most importantly the Navitimer, have been in air forces, to space, on a variety of diving missions. So really, every category of sports watch is covered by Breitling, as well as having various models which are more dress-like. In this video, I'm going to cover my favourite three in the current range. So the three watches which I think are the most interesting that Breitling currently produced. Now, the first watch which I'd like to cover is the Avenger Blackbird. Now, this watch is one of the most modern styles of watch in the Avenger range, and it's one of the non-chronograph versions. Now, personally, I like watches to either have a rotating bezel or a chronograph function. I personally don't like both. I just find it's too busy on my wrist. But this watch comes in two versions, a 44 and 48mm version, and choosing this would just depend on the wearer and the size of their wrist. For example, for my wrist, the 44 would probably be more appropriate. The larger version has a 300-meter water resistance, while the smaller 44mm version has a 200-meter water resistance, although I'm sure that would be fine considering how tough the rest of the watch is. Now, these watches are a black titanium, which reduces their weight, so the smaller version is about 70 grams, while the larger is about 110, which is pretty impressive, frankly, considering how large the watches are. Now, I particularly like the numerals around the edges of the dial, because this gives the watch a very military vibe, which is rarely seen on watches of this type. It should also be noted that these watches feature captive bezels, which means that the whole bezel is screwed on with a variety of little screws. This prevents the bezel from being knocked off in the case of a sharp knock. My second favourite watch in the Breitling range is the Super Ocean Heritage, and more specifically the 46mm version, because the date window is moved to 6 o'clock, where it gives a very balanced dial. So I love the hands on this watch, with the arrow style hour hand, which is seen on some Omega models, which is definitely a feature which I love on both the Omegas and on this Breitling. It has a fully polished case, so even the sides, the tops of the lugs and everything is polished, which gives a very old-fashioned vibe, which I rather like. It's available in a blue dial version, which I probably would choose. In terms of dials, I rather like this one because of its simplicity. Compared to other Breitling watches, which have very complicated and understandably so, seeing as they're professional watches, this has a very simple dial, which is easily legible at a glance. This watch would work as a dive watch, as it is water-resistant 200 meters, but I would say it's more of a dress diver because it has no crown guards, and that polished case will show scratches very quickly. A very nice feature of this, though, is that the bezel is slightly inset into the top of the lugs, which makes for a very svelte design of the whole case. I think the main selling point, though, of this watch is that it would work with, it worked just as well with a suit as it would with a polo shirt and a pair of jeans, making it a very versatile watch to own. I think that if someone was going to wear this watch, it would be a crime not to wear it on that beautiful Milanese bracelet, because it complements the polished case very, very well. Unsurprisingly, my favourite Breitling is a Navitimer. Now, this is their most famous watch, because it really is an iconic pilot's watch, because it has, for example, a speed. You can use it to judge speed on the dial, as well as fuel use and distance. It has a slide rule and so on. So it's an extremely complete pilot's watch, and of course it has that chronograph. Now, there's a variety of Navitimers on the market, but my favourite is the GMT, because I find that on a watch which is already very complicated in terms of the dial printing, I don't see any reason why not to add another complication, which is the GMT feature. Now, I appreciate that this watch is far too large for my wrist, strictly speaking, at 48mm lug to lug. However, pilots' watches are always large watches. I know that from some of the specifications of watches used by the Luftwaffe, the timepieces they were using were well in excess of 55 millimeters, which is massive compared to modern watches. But this watch, even though it's large, I think would look the part, even on a small wrist, due to its pilot's nature. Personally, I like this watch on a leather strap, because I find the bracelet, due to its completely polished nature, to be just too scratch prone for my liking, I'd be paranoid about scratching it on the desk while working. This watch is available with a black and white or just white dial, or rather cream, I suppose. And I would go for black and white, because it means that you can really tell the different parts of the dial apart easily, whereas with the cream, everything appears the same unless one looks closer. Now, the case is entirely polished, which again plays into that vintage vibe which the watch has. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe, and do share your favourite watches in the Breitling range in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. This is Arm on the Watch Guy, over and out.